This is a story from a few weeks ago, but it's worth mentioning because most people, I think, never heard about it. And I didn't hear about it myself until this morning. But it's especially relevant now in the wake of the Dexter Reed case, with the BLM set trying to have the officers in that case thrown in prison for an obviously totally justified police shooting where the cops were being shot at by Dexter Reed. They returned fire and he died. Well, on that note, here's the New York Times. A New York State trooper was acquitted of manslaughter charges on Wednesday in the killing of an unarmed man in downtown Buffalo after a high-speed highway chase. The trooper, Anthony Nigro IV, was found not guilty of first and second degree manslaughter charges by Judge James Bargnesi of Erie County Court following a bench trial. New York's Attorney General Letitia James charged Trooper Nigro last June in the fatal shooting of the man James Huber, 38, of Northeast Pennsylvania. Trooper Nigro, 40, of Eden, New York, had faced up to 25 years in prison if convicted. Charles W. Murphy, the president of the New York State Troopers Police Benevolent Association, said in a statement that the union was pleased with the verdict. Mr. Murphy said, quote, "We commend the judge for his decision, as it is clear the charges were not applicable to this case." A spokeswoman for Miss James, Letitia James, said in a statement that the office remains committed to conducting thorough and transparent investigations of every case following the facts of pursuing justice. The spokeswoman then continued, "We offer our sincerest condolences to Mr. Huber's loved ones." Nicole Fry, Huber's sister, said, "My brother didn't deserve to die that way." So the family's upset, as you'd expect. Okay, well, so that's the case. So this state trooper, Anthony Nigro, was charged with first and second degree manslaughter, as you heard, facing 25 years in prison, just found not guilty in the shooting. The suspect, James Huber, was pulled over after driving erratically and going over 100 miles an hour on the highway. And in fact, he led the police on a high-speed chase. And he then got off on the local roads and they called off the chase for some reason, I guess because for safety, they didn't want to, whatever the policy is. But then he was pulled over anyway a short time after that. And that's when Nigro pulled him over and the shooting occurred. So let's go back to the body cam footage, which was released back in 2022. And we could see how this unfolded. And so here's the footage along with an explanation of what you're seeing from the YouTube channel Law and Crime Network. Let's watch it.
A New York State Trooper of the Year is now charged with manslaughter after he allegedly shot and killed an unarmed man who refused to get out of his vehicle.
What's up, Jones? I shot him. I got the camera rolling and stuff.
Law and Crime Network first brought you the story last year when body camera video was released of the February 12th, 2022 shooting. At the time, officials responded to a call for an erratic driver.
749 to 37 for termination pursuit.
Officials say the driver, 38-year-old James Huber, was speeding at more than 100 miles per hour along Interstate 90. When Huber crashed into a state police squad car and headed for downtown Buffalo, the search was called off. But Trooper Anthony Nigro IV later caught up with Huber in the city's downtown. Body camera video shows Nigro approach Huber's vehicle, telling him to get out.
Get the f*** out! Get out! Get out!
Next, Huber appears to reach for something in the center console of his vehicle. Seconds later, Nigro opens fire.
Go away. Dude, get out. Get out. Get out. Get the f*** out.
The vehicle then takes off and crashes on its side near a parking ramp.
Okay, so Huber was going 100 miles an hour. Cops tried to stop him. He fled. Eventually, he is stopped. Nigro approaches the vehicle. His gun's already drawn, which makes sense given that they were just involved in a high-speed chase with this guy. So they have reason to be very wary. And he tells Huber to get out of the car. He tells him multiple times he refuses, doesn't comply. And then we can see in the video, Huber turns and reaches for something in the center console, and that's when he gets himself shot. And as you can see in the video, this is not subtle. This is not one of those things where he just like kind of vaguely moves his arm and then the cop says he was reaching. This is not a gray area like it's on the line. It could go either way. He turns very deliberately, very clearly, turns away from the officer and reaches over. So obviously a justified shooting by Nigro. In fact, it isn't just a justified shooting. I mean, we should not be calling stuff like this merely justified. We should be giving medals to cops like Nigro. We should be applauding and rewarding them for their courage. Because, simply walking up and approaching a vehicle with some erratic lunatic behind the wheel, that takes real courage to do that. And look, I know that people these days roll their eyes when we talk about cops being heroes and being courageous. And not all of them are, obviously not. Yeah, they're bad cops. And whenever I see a case of a bad cop doing something bad, I'm never hesitant to call it out. I have no problem with that. And if you watch this show, you know that. But it's also true that it takes real bravery just to do some of the stuff that we consider normal for cops. And if you don't believe me, then I ask you, put yourself in this same situation. A guy's been driving erratically. He's going 100 miles an hour. The cops are chasing him. He's not pulling over. He's finally stopped. He's sitting in the car. You're alone. You have your gun. That's all you have. Would you want to walk up to the car in that case with that suspect inside? Even with a gun, would you want to do that? How much would I have to pay you to walk up to that car in that situation with that guy inside there, just involved in a high-speed chase, 100 miles an hour, driving erratically, some lunatic behind the wheel, anything else about him? How much would I have to pay you to approach that car and try to, not even just approach it, but try to get that guy out of the car? Because, you could easily die in the process. The guy behind the wheel, the suspect, if he has a weapon, which he very easily could, it only takes him 1 second to pull it out and shoot you in the face, and you're dead. So, how much money would I have to pay you to approach the car under that circumstance? I'll tell you this, for me, it would take a lot. It would take a lot of money. In fact, I don't know if there's any amount that would be enough. But this is the kind of situation that cops are in, while getting paid a lot less than it would take for me or you probably to walk up to that car in that situation. Regina Chaley Academy is an accredited pre-K through 12 classical homeschool hybrid academy for Catholic families in cities across the U.S. They provide in-classroom lessons 2 times a week and in-home lesson plans that support parents the other 3 days a week. Regina Chaley Academy, with your support, has provided nearly $500,000 in student tuition assistance for the 2023 to 2024 academic year. Your participation in the Courage Under Fire Gala, a significant event in our mission to evangelize, will help us continue to provide tuition assistance in the future. Come and join me on May 24th in Nashville, Tennessee for a night of encouragement and camaraderie. I'll be speaking alongside Dr. Abby Johnson and Father Calloway on how to have courage and stand up for the truth. No matter what adversity you face, we'll be joined by some of the most influential leaders in the conservative movement for a night of connection and inspiration. VIP tickets will have access to an exclusive meet and greet with all speakers. And if you can't attend, please consider donating today to support families and continue to train the heart, mind, and the soul. Every dollar counts. For tickets, visit courageunderfiregala.org and use code DailyWire at checkout. That's courageunderfiregala.org and use code DailyWire. Can't wait to see you there. And that's only taking into account the physical risk. The physical risk is already substantial. And now we have to add another risk. So put yourself in Nigro's shoes all over again. The erratic suspect is pulled over. You're walking up to the car. He could be armed. In fact, you have every reason to think that most likely he is. Because he's obviously already engaged in, he's already seems to be desperate to evade justice. And on top of that, so there's the physical risk, but on top of that, you realize that if you don't walk the tightrope perfectly, right, in this life or death situation, if you act a little too quickly, you'll go to jail forever. So this is the spot you're in. If you're too slow, you die. If you're a little too quick, prison forever. So there's 2 different ways that your life could be over after this. So I ask you again, how much would I have to pay you to approach the car in that situation? I think for me, again, I mean, you could say $10 million. You could offer me $10 million, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it for $10 million. $50 million, I wouldn't do it. Because the risk is so high. It's like I might easily die, or maybe even more so, I could end up in prison. I don't want to risk that. I got a family. And then we added a third situation, because even if you do handle it perfectly, even if you're entirely by the book, if you do everything exactly as you should, you might still be charged with a crime. And then you're at the mercy of a judge or a jury or both. And who knows what happens then? It's at best a toss-up. So that's what happened to Nigro. He did everything right. He did everything by the book. Totally, perfectly blameless every step of the way. And they still arrested him. They still tried to put him in jail. And so, I mean, you want me to hate cops? I just can't. I think you're a fool if you can't you are a moron if you cannot recognize the situation these guys are in, and also the fact that we still need people like to do these kinds of jobs. I mean, you can't have someone driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour. He's going to kill somebody. We need people who will stop someone who's driving 100 miles an hour and being erratic on the highway. Like, we need people in that role to stop people like that. And I think we all, unless you're totally brain dead, you recognize that. You recognize that we do, like, if you want to have a civilized society, you need laws. And then if you want to have laws, you need law enforcement. So unless you're completely brain dead, you recognize at least those two things. If you don't recognize those two things, then I'm not interested in talking to you. Then it's just, you're not a serious person. We can't have a conversation anymore. But if you recognize those two things, then it's like we need people to do this job, but then we've now created a scenario where it's just it's a lose-lose every single day they're facing. And in fact, a cop approaching a vehicle like that, and again, it's a relatively normal kind of situation for a cop to be in. So I'm not even taking some extreme scenario. This is just approaching a car where there's a guy that's been doing something erratic and dangerous. Happens all the time, cities all across the country. But a police officer approaching a vehicle like that in this environment is in a more difficult situation in that moment than you will ever be in your entire life. Like, you will probably never in your entire life be in a situation where both your life and your freedom simultaneously are on the line to that extent. He's juggling more things with more at stake in that one single moment than you will probably ever have to in your whole entire life. And he's doing it for like $85,000 a year. He's getting paid what a Home Depot manager gets paid to do it. It's not sustainable. It's not. The disincentives are so incredibly high now for people to do this absolutely necessary job. It's not a sustainable situation. And we hear so much about teachers and, the teachers are underpaid and, the public school teachers. Well, yeah, first of all, we don't need public school. We could get rid of the entire public school system. We'd be better off for it. You can't get rid of police officers. You get rid of police officers and society is gone. You no longer have society. You no longer have a civilized society without law enforcement. You can't, it's impossible. Get rid of public school and you can still have a society. In fact, a more thriving society. And on top of that, it's like, could you pay me a certain amount of money to teach social studies to sixth graders? Sure. That's not some, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, there's difficulties with it, but with these cops, I'm telling you, the situations they're in every day, you could not pay me any amount to put myself in that situation. And all of that, the only time when I could be incentivized to be in a situation like that is if my own life or my loved ones' lives are on the line, in which case you wouldn't need to pay me anything. Okay? In which case, but doing all that at the same time in service to a community of people, most of them you don't even know and aren't related to you. And on top of that, a community that hates you I mean, so it's just, the more you think about it, the more miserable it becomes for these guys. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.